Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode. Today, I've got Whitney Elkins-Hutton on the podcast. We were just chatting before this, and there's a lot of cool stuff that she's into. Y'all got to listen to this. She's the director of investor education at passiveinvesting.com. She is also the founder of ashwealth.com and the author of Money for Tomorrow: How to Build and Protect Generational Wealth. And get this, it was published by Bigger Pockets. Whitney, welcome to the show. It's great to have you on.
Thank you so much for having me on, Brandon.
Well, let's get into your background real quick before we get into your book, Money for Tomorrow. I'm very interested in discussing, like these six pillars that people need, understand money and what to do with it and how to pass it on to their kids. I was real excited when we were talking before this. I was like, all right, yes, we definitely need to dive into this. There's a lot here. But before we do, maybe give the audience a little bit of backstory on how you got to be doing what you're doing to this point.
Well, I'd like to say that I went to school for real estate and I've got a business degree from like in a prestigious business school, but I don't. I actually started off in real estate completely by accident. I bought a house with a significant other back in 2002, and the relationship, fell apart about a month later, and I had a house, and I panicked. I was like, "What do I do with this thing?" And so I thought the house was going to bring me down financially, so I stuffed it full of roommates. It was in dire need of a rehab. That was the value that my partner was supposed to bring to the project. And anyway, so I bribed my friends and pizza, beer, and sushi, and we put this house back together. And 11 months later, I sold it and made more money in that one transaction than I did working my day job. That had me traveling sometimes 80 hours a week. And don't get me wrong, I was working in public health. I loved what I did, but I was like, whoa, hold on. That was the first time I actually knew that I could unhook the value I created in the world from the actual time that I spent creating the value. And I was
Huh.
like, okay, this is a cool side hustle. How many more of these deals can I do? Not everything went completely smooth. Some of the deals I hit, home runs on. Other deals, my second deal almost lost it all. And fast forward a few years later, I'm continuing to live and flip in the house hack. A friend of mine mentioned because I was complaining that I didn't have cash flow, that I had to wait until I sold a house to do something. And they were like, well, why don't you put a renter in it? And I was like, are you kidding me? Of course, I should put a renter in it. And so dove in head first, acquired 36 single family properties, a couple of small multifamily properties, and then hit my next level of achievement, which is we had our baby girl. And I should say, next ceiling is that when we had our baby girl, I didn't have time to
Yeah.
continue to manage all these single family properties. So scaled up in larger multifamily transactions. And then I was like, wait a second, should I be doing everything on my own in these transactions, or should I learn to invest in other people's deals? I wonder which one's going to get me the financial freedom the soonest. And the spoiler alert, even though I did both, it was actually learning to invest in other people's projects, those type of partnerships that really accelerated my portfolio build and allowed me to scale enough cash flow to become financially free.
Why was that? Why was investing in other people's deals the key?
Well, I was able to leverage several things. I was able to leverage their market knowledge, their asset knowledge, so I could diversify my portfolio. I could leverage their teams. I wasn't the one having to scale my team internally. I
Yeah.
could leverage their credit and ability to get lending. I could leverage their ability to use other people's capital to close on larger and larger deals, more stabilized institutional grade deals. But the most important thing is I got to leverage their time.
Mhm.
And so I got that time back for myself. So while I'm sitting here very focused on, helping two partners of mine scale a multifamily syndication business, I didn't have to learn how to do self-storage. I didn't have to learn how to do hotels or express car washes or whatever I was investing in at the moment. I could actually go find the experts and leverage their knowledge and expertise and get a split of the profits doing it.
Yeah, it's huge because when you set off on this whole like financial freedom journey, a lot of it's like, all right, I'm gonna do my own in house. And I think single family rentals are like the most popular thing, right? Everyone sees the TV shows and they talk about the mailbox money from the rents, and then they do it and they realize like, oh my gosh, the amount of time it takes to manage all this. It is not as passive as I thought, is very, very active. And then you realize like the key is really outsourcing it to somebody else, right? Being the capital piece, and then you getting really good at whatever you're doing to like make money, and then just funneling that into whatever passive investments that produce that cash flow that you need to live off of. So super cool you're able to do that and realize that. Talk to us about your Money for Tomorrow book. I know there were like 6 pillars here. Let's get into it.
Well, and I just want to say I 110% agree with you. I mean, but people have to start somewhere. If that's where you need to start is getting that first single family rental, fantastic. Do that because it's don't wait to get into the game, right? It's get into the game and wait, right? You have to start building momentum. But as soon as you can start leveraging other people's systems, other people's time, the quicker you can do that, the happier you're going to be with your investing portfolio. And every year I evaluate all the holdings. We still have some active holdings in our portfolio. And every year I'm like, okay, which one of these duds can I get rid of? And maybe it's not a dud from a financial perspective, but I calculate my return on my time. And I'm like very, very, driven to like leverage my time as much as possible. Now, Money for Tomorrow, this is a book. This is the book that I actually wrote it for one person. I wrote it for my daughter. So as I'm scaling our portfolio over the past 22 years, right? Tons of lessons and learning about like how money works, what wealth really means, what are the rules of the wealth game, right? We all have learned how to play Monopoly probably like in there's knowing how to play Monopoly and then there's being really good at Monopoly. And those are two different strategies. And so, we might know about money, we might know about investing, but how do we get really good at this?
Uh-huh.
And so over this whole journey, I'm documenting all my lessons and learnings. And then I'm documenting them for our daughter, passing this knowledge on to her at some point in time. But then I have like 5 family members along this journey that pass away. And it was the first couple of states that I settled. There were 3 probates, 2 trusts in there. And, I could look at these and go, wow, it was really sad. There was a lot of financial knowledge here, but not a whole lot of capacity. They lost money here and there that got eroded by taxes or, went to probate. And so there's a ton of legal fees on the back end. But it was when I settled my mom's estate, that's when I started tallying up how many dollars all these estates lost. And then across all 5 estates, $700,000 had been eroded away that did not need to go. And I was like, I'm just curious, if I compound that at 7% for 30 years, how much is that? That's $5.3 million lost to my daughter's generation. I was like, I can't be the only person that this is happening to. And so while I'm writing all these things down about how to create money, how to move your income from passive or active income to passive income, all the different ways, documenting all the different ways that regular people like you and I are losing money that we can like button up, like seal up the leaks, all the different ways that investors should know how to grow their portfolio, whether the market goes up, down, or sideways. I'm writing all this and I was like, wow, if people just had this document in their hands, how powerful could that be? Like if I can stop one person from losing $10,000 or $100,000 over the course of their lifetime, that's going to be such a huge impact, not only to their lives, but also to their future generation and their family. And that's
Can
how we're going to stop this cycle.
can you unpack the $700,000 of erosion? Like what did that look like?
Oh, credit card fees, home foreclosure fees, having to turn over cars and property over to Medicare and Medicaid, taxes, legal fees. And these were all things that if there had just been a little bit of education, knowledge, and just, capacity, really, like being connected to the right resources, that would have helped these people in my family keep a hold of some of these assets, be it physical assets or monetary assets.
Interesting. Wow. So I bet that was a big wake up call. I can't imagine $700,000 of wealth erosion. And it's not just the actual loss. It's the opportunity cost, like not having that $700,000 and having it compound per year at, 6, 7, 8%. Like, what did you lose? Very powerful stuff. Let's jump into your books and the topics. I want to get into the meat of it. So, I guess let's start with that first pillar. What is it and what do investors need to know?
Yeah. So again, I'll bring it back to the game analogy. It's like, what is wealth? Okay.
Okay.
If wealth is a game, the
Okay.
objective is to be able to have enough passive income to do what you want, when you want, with whom you want.
Yeah.
Generational wealth is training the next generation to do the same and steward what you've built.
Uh huh.
Okay. So being capable, okay, on building upon what you've already built. Now, the rules, you have to be able to create wealth in your sleep. So, how do we stop trading time for money and move that into creating residual wealth where our assets are kicking off enough passive income to not only cover our expenses, but the lifestyles that we want to live? Okay. And then setting also kicking off enough income to continue to invest and grow. The other big pillar is how do we keep our wealth? Okay. And these are, there's really 6 things that I tackle in here and we can unpack them as well. But the big things that, and a lot of people, they follow Dave Ramsey, they follow Susie Orman, they have their time in place. I totally get it. If somebody's horrible with credit, and they just need to, not use any debt whatsoever. Dave Ramsey's approach to eliminating debt is super powerful. But for those people who have the ability to use debt wisely, there's a better approach. And that is, learning to, we call it the cash flow index. This is a concept I learned from my mentor, Chris Miles. And so like, how can you understand what the loan balance divided by your minimum monthly payment? You create an index here, and that'll help you understand which debt you should pay off first. The lower the index, that's the debt that you should pay off first. The higher the index, that is debt that is probably more effective for your portfolio. You can hang on to it, and at some point in time, you might want to eliminate it. But how do we leverage debt correctly? Also, how do we leverage insurances correctly? This was a huge thing, especially a lesson learned in my family. My dad, before Obamacare or Affordable Healthcare Act, he exhausted 2 insurance policies. And
Hmm.
quite frankly, he should have been on different types of insurance for his medical conditions. But, how do we leverage insurance to outsource our liability? Home insurance, renter's insurance, auto insurance, different types of gap insurance like umbrella insurance. How do we make sure that we're appropriately covered? And then also, are we keeping up with those policies? I know so many homeowners that get a home insurance policy. And Brandon, I'll ask you the question. When was the last time you went back and renegotiated your home insurance policy with your company and said, hey, are we appropriately covered on our house?
I haven't. In fact, I'm literally doing it. I've got a call. I'm not joking, in an hour and a half with my auto insurance that I pay $160 a month on that I've been with for like 15, 16 years. And I'm like, this looks like it's kind of a high amount now that I'm looking at like what these advertised rates are. So yeah, it's something that I have not done.
Yeah. Well, and there's renegotiating to lower the bills, but there's also renegotiating to make sure you're appropriately covered. And I'll give you an example.
Mm.
2 years ago, just over 2 years ago, I live in Boulder, Colorado. We had a urban fire, wiped out 1,100 homes within a matter of like 4 hours in one afternoon. No prayer stopping it. The winds were so high that day. And like I said, this is the middle of town. This is not in some countryside. This is not in a mountain town. This is in the middle of town. Um, I would imagine like 50, 60% of those people were probably 20 to 30% underinsured on their homes because the asset prices had gone up so high.
They didn't go back and say, hey, my home is worth more. Get it added to the insurance policy. Yeah. Yeah.
And we assets across the United States, our primary homes, most people are in a similar boat that the asset price has gone up, but they're going, yes, my insurance is so low. Well, if you're not appropriately covered and you experience a loss, that's huge. Now, so many other people are working from home right now. And so if you have a home office or if you're moved your business out of your house, you probably are not adequately insured if you have a devastating loss. right? You're not going
Yeah.
to get your computers covered. You're not going to get, compensated for loss of business there, especially if you move your business into your home. So you need to make sure you have the right writers. So
So
those
is
are
the first pillar asset protection?
the first pillar. So I think we're latching on to pillars. That's where I refer to it in growth. But the
Okay.
first rule is you got to learn how to create wealth. The second
Okay.
rule, you got to learn how to keep it.
Okay. Got it.
And that's
Protected
what,
is step two.
and then and then step three, rule number three is how do we grow it? Okay. And then step four is how do we pass it on? Or rule four is how do we pass it on? And so most investors over concentrate on rule one and three, and they neglect rule two and four. And it's really rule two and four that's going to keep them from losing hundreds of thousands of dollars in their own personal state, and then, the future opportunity cost to other generations.
Okay. Yeah, I want to get to the future generations. I got a comment right there. So we've covered how to make it so far. We've gone into how to protect it.
Just
Now,
two steps on how to protect it. But yeah, that's a little taster there.
okay, got it. And then so let's go into number 3 here. What do investors need to know about number 3?
Yeah. So how do you grow your wealth? And so really, there's three assets here that really are time tested to help you grow wealth. And that is going to be, mostly real estate, and then investing in businesses. Okay. Investing in real estate, investing in businesses. Now, the third one is, how do you use life insurance policies? I don't really consider that an asset, but we can stick a pin in that because that's kind of a different conversation. But when we're
Yeah.
looking at how we invest, learning to invest in real estate and businesses. But we have to make sure it's not all about the return. We need to essentially put the investing cards in our favor and tap into 7 different pillars. The more pillars we can get with an investment, the better. Pillar number 1, capital preservation. Don't lose money. Invest in an asset that has a high chance of not losing money. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
Warren
avoid
Buffett.
individual stocks, things that can go to 0, look at things that have historically held value. Okay, got it.
Yep. Number 2, cash flow. Okay. I get told all the time by investors, I don't need the cash flow. I've got a job. And I'm like, yes, you do. You will eventually need the cash flow. And what happens if life changes for you overnight? You're going to need the cash flow. If you
Yeah.
don't need it now, fantastic. Aggregate it, move it into step number 3, which is equity growth. Put yourself in position to get natural equity growth, but also forced equity growth where there's a business plan to grow the equity. Number 4, tax benefits. Let's take advantage of those tax benefits. That's why real estate and business is so powerful.
Mhm.
And then, 5, 6, and 7, those are kind of amplifiers. Are you using leverage wisely? Okay. The past 18 months have taught us that not everybody uses leverage wisely. That can be a problem. And then, invest in assets that have inflation hedging to them. Real estate and businesses will naturally have inflation hedging to them. And then invest in the operator. Now, you might be the operator, or you might be investing in somebody else's business.
Uh,
They're the operator. So make sure that is whoever you invest with, they're the expert. Make sure you know, love, and trust them. And there's a whole wealth of information out there on how to do due diligence on operators.
let's talk about the equity, investing in equity. So that's growth, and then the how to properly use leverage. So how do you properly use leverage? You just gave an example. There's a right way to do it and a wrong way. Maybe give some real life examples of both.
Yeah. So it really boils down to making sure you're using leverage, that the leverage you use, the loan that you take out on the property, and I'm
Uh,
going to keep my examples to real estate, match the business plan. And so what we saw for the past 18 to 24 months are, operators taking out bridge debt on properties to juice the cash flow, right? Um, it was lower cost to them. They had interest only. Now, that might be fine and dandy if there is a strong business plan to increase the net operating income in a very short time. But in most cases, that wasn't happening. The operators didn't have that, game plan in place. So therefore, the leverage in the business plan were mismatched. Now, I know in the single family space, this pushed so many people back to like, how can I get a 30-year fixed loan and fix that interest rate as low as possible? That's great. But there is a time in case that you might want to use adjustable rate lending. Another thing about lending, are you, do you have ability to extend the debt? Okay. Are you going to be forced to do a refinance at the very end or sell the property? Do you have flexibility in your business plan to be able to extend that debt? What's the cost of the rate cap? Okay. Are you setting aside funds now for the rate cap? Do you even have a rate cap? I know so many, even in the past 12 months on the Multifamily Investor Nation show, that's a show that I run. I speak to so many operators, and I was surprised that half of them still weren't purchasing a rate cap because we're expecting interest rates to go down in the next 6 to 12 months.
Yeah. And if you're listening and you don't know what a rate cap is basically purchasing a piece of real estate where the interest rate the bank can charge you or the lender can charge you is capped. In other words, if rates go up, to 7-8% like we saw them do, you can buy a rate cap that basically says like, hey, I'm going to buy this insurance policy that prevents it from going up past, 5% or whatever. It basically protects you so your loan that you're paying per month doesn't go up. Just wanted to clarify that for the audience.
Absolutely. And remember, we talked about insurance. This is the very beginning. Outsource liability. That's the whole point of it. Well, right now, interest rates, some of these people that I talked to, it's 6 to 8, 9 months later, those rates haven't come down yet. And actually,
Yeah.
there's been some grumblings that they might continue to go up. So, those are just some ways to take a look at the leverage and make sure that it is properly matched to the business plan of the asset.
Got it. Makes sense. The equity piece. You mentioned one of the 7 steps was the equity that you need to invest for growth. Talk to us about that. What are we investing in? What are we looking
Yes.
at?
So, when we talk about real estate, there's the natural market equity. Is the growth going to continue to go up and to the right? And for some people, I don't know, like on Zoom, that might be backwards, but like, are we going to continue to see asset prices continue to go up? That's natural market equity. Then there's like forced equity. So are you buying a piece of property and, maybe it's below value and you can do a little bit of a rehab on it. Maybe you see a potential to add more streams of income to the property.
Mm.
That especially when we're talking institutional grade assets, larger assets, we can actually impact the value of the asset by growing its income. And so those are things that I particularly like. That's one of the reasons why I got out of the buying individual single family houses, because I was like, wait a second, my equity in the property is based on what the guy sold his for in the past 6 months. Whereas if I'm in a multifamily building, even if it's 5 units or 10 units, I now can command more, if I can just find ways to take bets on myself and grow the equity in this asset, or grow the income, therefore get more equity. And then you have natural or what we call pay down type equity. And this is, where you're outsourcing the loan to the tenant or to the customer, and they are paying down the loan for you. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not, depending on the loan that's in place.
So you're wanting to invest in equity that you've got control over, basically. Like, we'd kind of do something similar when we raise money from investors where we're going in, rezoning the land first. And then once all the value has been added, take it from 3, 4, 5 homes to 100 homes, and you've built all this value into it, and then close on it. Where in your case, you're buying something where the rents are not where the market is. You can increase them, or there's a way to increase the value of the building through renovations and increasing rents, etc. So that equity there's a force appreciation. You're not just speculating that I hope that commercial real estate goes up or down, or I hope the stock market goes down. Do I have that right?
Exactly. No, definitely.
All right, perfect. So we covered those 7 steps. Now let's talk about, I guess, pillar number 5. Are we on number 5 now?
Rule number 4. So
Number
rule
4.
number
All
1,
right.
learn how to create wealth. Rule number 2,
Okay.
learn how to keep it. Rule number 3, learn how to grow it. Rule number 4, learn how to pass it on. Those are the 4 rules you have to master
Okay.
to win the wealth game. Now, we've been
Okay.
talking about a lot of strategies in there,
Yeah.
but Rule number 4, pass it on. And this can be, there's some key components here. One, you have to plan for your incapacity. And we can dive into these in a second. You have to have your legal documents in place. And this is where most people stop. I got my will, I got my trust, I'm good. Peace out. Like, I'm ready. Like, I'm ready to pass away. My heirs are fine. No, right? Because does your executor know what to do? So that's step number 3, making sure you train your executor, that they know what you were thinking, like whenever you put together your will, that they can actually, take everything through the end process that it needs to be, whether they're going through probate or just settling a trust. And then train your heirs. That's another step to this process, step number 4. And then step number 5 is actually building a board, because you should have all these things in place sooner than you think. So if you're living and breathing right now, listening to this podcast, and you don't have a plan for your incapacity right now, or a living will or trust, or excuse me, or a will or a trust, you're behind. Because you don't know what's going to happen tonight or tomorrow. And so those are the things, and it's not fun. It's not savvy. Nobody wants to talk about this. Like, I remember giving this presentation at the Bigger Pockets conference about a year and a half ago, and I opened up this section of the talk and I said, okay, let's talk about how to die. And I actually misspoke. And the whole room kind of gave that nervous giggle and then went really silent. But afterwards, everybody was saying that was the best piece, because they were like, my butt's in gear now to go take care of this.
Yeah, I know of a family back in my single family, flipping world, I would kind of help settle estates, and that was kind of one of the things we did to add value. But it would tear families apart because the matriarch and patriarch passing away never created a plan, and it was just passed on, and then the siblings would fight over it, and oh my God, it tears families apart. And so it's so sad to see that you can build this lovely family, and if you do not at the very end properly pass it on, it can literally rip everything that you've spent your entire life apart. So it's very important. I want to get your take on this. I've battled with this subject. We talk about generational wealth, and people want to pass it on to their kids. It's the epitome when we talk about passive investing, financial freedom. I think that a big part of the gift in life is being able to experience the journey and who you become on that journey, coming from, nothing or a little bit of something into, building your own life. And I have thought very hard on whether or not passing on my wealth directly to my children is actually the best thing for them. What are your thoughts on that? Because it can very easily, destroy someone. We've seen a lot of trust funds create drug addicts. We have seen wealth just produce couch potatoes. And so it's kind of tricky on how to manage that. What are your thoughts around that? What do you think?
Oh my gosh, I have so many. So keep me contained here. Number 1, wealth isn't necessarily about the money. It can be the knowledge. And so if you have kids, if you have family that you're passing this on to, bring them along for the ride. They should be learning right alongside you. My daughter, she understands. We started playing cash flow for kids when she was like 3.5. And my family thought I was crazy. I'm like, if she knows the difference between an asset and a liability at 3.5, like, I'm so far ahead of the game. She's so far ahead of the game. And it kept me from buying like every toy when we went to Target. And she still understands this, right? And so now she's 11. She, has she provides a lot of value around the house. She has a healthy work ethic. She makes her own money. She's in a position where she now knows, she has a thought process. She now knows, do I want to actually spend my money on this? And we make her, I don't want to say make mistakes, but there's sometimes we come home with a big squishmallow stuffy, and my husband's like, what? We don't need anymore.
Do today.
Like, yeah. I'm like, and I was like, but now, like, she has to make a decision, like, because in next week she's gonna want a sweater, when we go out, like, but she doesn't have any money because she spent it on this. I'd rather her make those mistakes now, or choices now, or learn from those choices, now, as opposed to with hundreds of, tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars later. So it's the knowledge and the skills. right? Those are I think the most important things to really pass down. Um, there's a book out there called Die with Zero. I forget the author's name. Maybe you know. But I really think that, I understand the concept, right? Like I created the wealth, I should get to spend it. And like maybe I leave a little bit to my heirs,
Yeah.
that's really
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
But again, like if they have that, again, remember the way I define generational wealth is the last part of the definition is that the next generation is able to steward what you've built.
Yeah.
Right. And
They've
so I
got to
think
take care of it.
they've got to take care of it. And they got to know, one, they should be right beside you as you're making those wealth decisions. Like my husband and I, we talk about our investment decisions at the dinner table. It drives our daughter crazy. And we try to keep it very contained for 5 minutes, but we want her to have that exposure. So she understands that this is a lot of work that we're
Mhm.
doing in order to build this for her. Kind of the last piece of the puzzle though is making sure that you have those things written down. You can have it like a purpose statement written with your trust. And so one, you can organize your trust in such a way to where, if you want your kids to go to school or build a business, or maybe they do have some sort of drug addiction, alcohol addiction, that you can put some bumpers around how that gets passed on to them. So there's a myriad different ways you can structure your trust. But for me, the most important page of our trust is actually the first page, which is the purpose statement. It's we put our assets in this trust for her to steward, and this is what we expect from
Mhm.
her and future generations. Here are some, I mean, it's 5 pages. Like here are the where our mindset is when we crafted this is our the books that we love. We're constant, it's a living breathing document, we're constantly adding to it. Read all these books before you turn 25, before you go into your first investment. And so we're constantly updating that purpose statement. But again, that shouldn't be a document that they read when you're dead, right? That should be a document that you're, teaching them, in the process. So really, when you pass on, they should read that purpose statement and go like, yeah, I've seen this a million times. Like my parents wouldn't shut up about it.
Yeah. But I mean, let's say if you're out there and you're not seeing that your child, even in the adult stages, is making progress and acquiring those skills. Let's say that, obviously your daughter's done a really good job of this, but let's say she didn't, let's say
Yep.
she's, 40, 50 years old and she didn't acquire the skills. Would you still leave your wealth to her?
I mean, we would probably amend our trust in such a way. Like for us, we have a living trust, so we can continue to mend it.
Mhm.
Divide it up, leave it, half of our estate to, other entities, other family members, right? You know, for me, would I'm going to answer the question directly, but let me think on this. Would I personally, if my daughter say was like, had alcohol or drug addiction or something like that, I would probably put some parameters on that trust that she needed to get clean. And you can actually have, I'm forgetting the name of it, but like a professional trustee
I see.
manage the trust.
Mhm.
And so, that would help put kind of like in like you can contact a bank, you can contact your lawyer's office. There are professional trustees out there, and that can kind of, especially if you're wanting to pass down assets, pass down money, you
Mm.
know, have them step in to manage the trust for say like 10 years
I
until
see.
that person has proven that they have gotten, their stuff together to be able to take that responsibility in on their own.
Yeah. So obviously, there's pretty big red flags here. And you're like, all right, if there's this drug addiction thing, then obviously we're gonna have to kind of look at that to really assess whether or not we need to pass it on. But what about for ones that are in the gray lines? People who have kids that are, they got a good job, they're making it, no drug addiction or anything like that. And it's kind of a gray area because they're not quite sure, does my child have the skill sets or not? When you're looking at your daughter, how do you know for sure that she's reached the point when she's ready?
Well, for one, right now she's 11, so she's not ready.
Right.
Right. But I mean,
What are
you
you
know,
looking for though? When she does get
yeah.
into adulthood and she's taking these steps, because a lot of people have this question, I'm sure, that are looking to, pass their stuff on, and they've got this question. It's bullying in their mind. It's like, how do I know when my kids are ready to, take this generational wealth versus, all right, maybe I need to, put a professional trustee in place for 10 years or something like that.
Mhm. I think that's such a personal question to answer. And, quite frankly, like, were any of us ready, like at the age of 18 to like strike out on our own and like, right?
No.
So we have to be able to, continually be challenged and either rise up to the challenge or potentially stumble and fail. And for me, I fully believe in that experience that failure is going to teach you so much more than constantly getting the A, making the grade, right? So I do expect my daughter, like, if we, you know, pass away and she's like in her 20s, I would imagine she's gonna make, is it gonna be smooth sailing? No, I imagine she's still gonna make a bad investment or take a big trip, do something with the money that we probably didn't intend for her. But at some point in time, I have to let go. For
Yeah.
me, I can only do what for me, I need to set the expectation on myself. I'm such a huge follower of Jocko Willings. Like, am I doing everything that I possibly can to put her in the best position? And then at some point in time, I have to let go. And maybe letting go is turning it over to that professional trustee, or letting go is turning it over to them in part or in whole or in stages, and just saying, you know what, we did the best we can. And, eventually they'll hopefully grow into this.
Yeah, eventually you're gonna have to make a judgment call. This was awesome. I love this. It's a topic that does not get discussed a lot. A lot of people are, hesitant to talk about it, especially in their family. So thank you for opening up and sharing on that. We're out of time. I wanted to get to the last two pillars. Maybe you can kind of give like a brief, like, what those last two pillars are, and then how do people learn more about you and your business and services?
Yeah, definitely. Well, we covered all four rules of the wealth game. So create
Okay.
wealth, keep wealth, grow it, pass it on. We didn't dive into all the different 6 ways you can keep it. So I'll rattle those off. The big guys, right? There's so many things you can do. Use debt wisely, use insurances wisely, eliminate your tax bill, get rid of all the fees that you possibly can, including retirement fees. Sidesteps provisional income in retirement. That's a huge one for anybody listening that's 5 to 10 years away from retiring. Call your CPA. Make sure you've got a plan to sidestep provisional income. And then number 6, plan for your incapacity. That's huge. So many people lose so much money out of the unexpected. Okay, that unexpected health bill that comes out. I'm like, have you
Yep.
planned for your incapacity? So those are kind of the 6 strategies there under keeping wealth. If people are interested in learning more about money for tomorrow, how to build and protect their generational wealth, you can reach out to me at ashwealth.com, ashwealth.com. And if you're interested in, adding multifamily self-storage or express car washes to your portfolio, that growth pillar, rule number 3, you can find me at passiveinvestingwithwhitney.com.
Passiveinvestingwithwhitney.com. We'll make sure all of those links are in the show notes below. Whitney, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for coming on today.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much, Brandon.